Grand opening, grand closing. So Starfield has initiated once again the classic conversation of this gen of 60 FPS versus 30 FPS. And there is a contention among the gaming community that is once again battling it out, but I think this time it has hit the tipping point. Mainly because of many influencers and just people who once advocated for 60 frames are now backing down and are going back to the discussion of, are these consoles powerful enough, or they're not good enough, pushing boundaries. And that level setting conversation is not being accepted by a good portion of the community. Not even the PC gamers, who technically don't have to worry about the discussion, right? Because the battle of 60 frames versus 30 frames is not really a PC discussion, because PC gamers have the options to play at the frame rate that they want to play. This conversation is very console centric, because if a developer decides that the game will only be released at 30 frames, there is nothing a console gamer can do. So this conversation is very detriment to console gamers, because in the end, we're the ones, right, or console gamers are going to be the ones to feel the blunt of that decision. Right? Here you see Dustin Langari. I'm going to show a little bit of his video. I'm going to let it play for about 8 minutes. But before I do that, I want to provide some context to the conversation. I see many people are in the conversation, and I don't think many of the gamers truly understand why is this a big deal, what happened, what's going on. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to recap a little bit of the past, right? So that way I could catch you up. Some of you know and seen what I will be showing you. You guys were there. Some of you had probably no idea, whether because you never really followed these accounts and now you're jumping into conversation only because, you know, this could be a situation where you're a fan of Starfield and you're tracking Starfield, and now all of a sudden you see all these conversations and you don't understand why 30 FPS or any of this is really that big of a deal or whatever. Why is Starfield, you know, involved in this? It's probably because you didn't see some historical context, because you weren't involved, because you didn't really care, and the algorithm of your social media probably didn't pull you in. But now that you're researching into Starfield, you're looking all in, you have your Xbox, now you've seen all this other stuff, and you may not understand why is this happening. You could just probably just leave it to, this is just fanboy. But I'm going to level set to you. So if you're new to this, you don't understand, I'm going to provide you with a little bit of context. And to provide context, I want to thank DualSense Flopper. Now, of course, he's a fanboy account, right? But factual information is factual information. This actually happened. Now, this was a pretty good thread he did. So good that I even went to his DMs and I asked him, hey, would you mind if I use this for my context? Because normally I don't normally do that for a tweet or two. But he put some effort into this and he captured it perfectly. All right. This is a very good. So, and I'm going to walk you through it. So he starts out with Xbox fanboys and executives changing their stance on frame rates in the span of 3 years, a thread, right? So, of course, these are executives. You know this person, very big Xbox influencer, runs a very successful channel, over 100K, all that good stuff, goes to all the Xbox events. You know, a very powerful influencer for the Xbox brand, right? He's making fun. This is Tim Dog. Shout out to my boy Tim Dog. They're just making fun of him. This is a classic picture of Xbox fanboys, right? But let's get to the meat of the thread. We'll click on this one right here. So let's take a look back to 2020. From the start, Xbox Series X was marketed as the most powerful of all time. We were promised that 60 FPS would be the standard output for this console. Xbox fanboys were claiming that the PS5 is underpowered and can't do 60 FPS. I will add some non-fanboy stuff. It wasn't just fanboys. We had other Xbox influencers. We started to see developers, and I will show you receipts on that, and Xbox, you know, corporate execs themselves. If it was just simply fanboys and that's it, then there's not really much to talk about, because people are going to talk what they're going to talk on Twitter. No. But once you reach the levels of influencers with a huge marketing, right? Huge influence, backed by branding, and then you have corporate execs saying similar statements, And then all of a sudden, out of the woodworks, developers, with some of them, or at least one that I know of, that said that he used to work for PlayStation during the PlayStation 2 days. Now you're changing the conversation. Now you're not talking about fanboys. The fanboys are using their words to weaponize the conversation. But make no mistake, their words are impactful. When you have influencers backed by the brand itself, and developers within the industry all pushing a certain message, that changes things now. This is not a random Twitter account with the egg or the silhouette talking, or someone with 2-5 followers. You could perceive that someone with influence, knowledge, and corporate backing is discussing this. You're going to pay attention. Example number 1, Aaron Greenberg. 60 FPS will be the standard output, but the architecture allows us to support up to 120 FPS. This is not a fanboy. He gets paid by Microsoft. He gets checks. He probably gets paid very well. He's been with the brand for decades. Over a decade at least. This is not some random Twitter account, whatever. This is his words. Right? Let's look on to this. Aaron Greenberg, congrats to our friends at Sony congrats to our friends at Sony on their show today. Xbox fans should know titles like GTA 5, Resident Evil Village, Hitman 3, NBA 2K21, Pragmata, etc. are going to look and play great on Xbox Series X, the world's most powerful console. Again, this is not a fanboy.
Xbox Series X, most if not all of the first-party Xbox.
Let me play this real quick. This is the power of branding and influencers who are backed by a brand. It's not just regular small-time YouTubers, whatever. These are people with a level of influence. And when you're backed by a brand, many gamers will look at them with a level of credibility. For example, if you had a PlayStation channel, 2 PlayStation channels, I'll use this for example. You got a PlayStation channel that enjoys PlayStation and when talks PlayStation. Then you got a PlayStation channel backed by the brand, backed by Sony. And that person goes to the events. They get the first cuts of games. They get to try out games. They get to actually make content for preview of games. A lot of PlayStation gamers are going to look at that as more legit source. Now let's listen to this.
Most if not all of the first-party Xbox Game Studios exclusives will either run at 60 FPS or above, or offer a performance mode to run at 60. Halo Infinite, Forza, Gears, Psychonauts 2, Everwild, Hellblade 2, and many more. Xbox has expressed that a target frame rate for the Xbox Series X console is 60 FPS, and they are setting the bar in-house, even with the platform supporting Xbox One for a year or two. Contrast this with the biggest games being shown by Sony for the PS5. Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart is being boasted by PlayStation engineers and developers to push for visual quality and animations at 30 FPS over the prospect of playing at 60. Insomniac believes that it is more important to see the quality animations and interactions with the world at 30 FPS than to compromise visuals or effects at the cost of playing at 60 FPS. Horizon Zero Dawn Forbidden West is also likely favoring visuals over performance. Even though looking at the delta of the PS4 Pro power to the PS5, the new hardware can easily handle these visuals at a manageable resolution at 60 FPS. Developers like Guerrilla Games are choosing to ramp up visuals at the cost of continuing to put out games at 30 FPS to create a filmic presentation when the game, and most every game on the PS5, would look truly next generation just if they were able to make it playable at 60 FPS or higher.
Now keep in mind, look at all the assumptions and Xbox influencers talking about PlayStation when he is not a PlayStation influencer, doesn't have access. He made all these assumptions when in factuality, these games came with 60 FPS performance options. I'm going to touch more into that. But this is part of the problem, and this is what's leading to this. But let's continue further. 30 FPS, 30 FPS DLC, 30 FPS popping. Seems like 30 FPS was the joke, right? Now notice in the video, right, that I just showed with Cole Eastwood, it seems the connotation of a developer choosing quality over performance so they can have the best quality, visuals, sounds like a bad thing. Notice, PlayStation developers are choosing the quality filmic visuals at the cost of performance. But now Starfield's okay? We're going to talk more about it. Well, now, however, it quickly turned out after the launch that PS5 was way more powerful than they thought. Not only could it hold up with the Xbox Series X, it was also able to outperform in some games, like AC Valhalla. This quickly turned into damage control. This is just an example. Launch was weird time. If you went around for the launch, or like part of this community, or knew this people, PlayStation 5 right out the gate outperforming Xbox Series X was crazy. I am going to show you a clip from the RDX podcast. Again, thanks to our to DualSense Flopper for putting this. They condensed like a 2-3 hour podcast to just the word tools, because that was the damage control for Xbox. All about the tools. It's the tools. It's tools. The tools not ready. That was the excuse. You're going to see right now. This is just one podcast. How bad they tried to use the tools as an excuse for PlayStation 5 outperforming Xbox Series X. Look how crazy this is.
Some of the tools that are secondly, tools, right? Tools involved with their tool sets, but tools are the tools is
it's the tools and down to the tools.
You did the tools that some of the tools he wanted the exact same tools are used. Considered a tool, the tool we're talking tools. That's my point. Tool right. Or tools, the tools and all this stuff.
Tools and stuff. Yeah, those new
all the
tools and stuff up there.
We're talking about the tools. Well, yes, the tools, the tools and the
it's and all the tools because the tools. Those tools are tools that
be some of the tool stuff like some of the.
You saw that tools, the tools. It was insane, right? Ever since 2021, it was clear that the tools were never a problem. The whole marketing campaign on around the power of the Xbox Series X turned out to be a failure. Microsoft went from calling it the most powerful console to the most powerful Xbox ever. And this is them. They changed it. They changed their slogan immediately. So they figured out something. And they could no longer carry the moniker of world's most powerful console. They gave that up. False advertisement, get sued. They probably bit cautious. In 2023, Microsoft will release 2 games that will have only a 30 FPS mode. So now they went from eating monsters for breakfast to I don't want to turn playing games into a math exercise. The same can be said about the Xbox fanboys who are absolutely fine with 30 FPS in 2023.
Done the same thing with Forza, and I don't ever want us to turn playing games into a math exercise. Yeah. That as players we say, hey, if the song doesn't have this number of tracks or the game, and I'm not saying that 60 or resolution don't impact what you play, but I don't think we want that to turn into an Excel thing. Right. I think you want to give the creatives the tools to make the best decisions, right. and the game will be what it is. Yeah. I think Starfield's going to be a great game, and I love the reception.
Okay. Now, look at some of this. This is 2020. How Microsoft marketing is killing the PS5 hype. You know it's going to be great gen when PS marketing is about justifying sub 4K 30 FPS. An influencer on Twitter. Look how 30 FPS, 60 FPS is so important. It's an example. And now all of a sudden, when Sony makes a game that's remotely on the scale of Starfield, then PS fans can talk about frames. While you play in the same map 3 times over the last 5 years, I'll be exploring planets. Take a seat, guys. Look at this. Now that's the damage control. But Starfield has a big scale. Acting like we didn't get games like Cyberpunk 2077, Red Dead Redemption 2, Witcher 3, No Man's Sky, etc. Some of these games are much more detailed, but still managed to do 60 on the PS Xbox Series X, so this shouldn't be an excuse. Now, I'm going to be fair. Everybody's making assumption about Starfield. It could be this huge, monumental, epic game that is just beyond. Like the next Star Citizen or whatever that PC game is, right? Or it could just be overhyped. Now, I'm not too sold on the whole scope and 1,000 planets. Because to me, it could just be 1,000 planets of nothing. And all you do is land there and it's just minerals. And really, the whole design of the game with these extra planets is for you to start playing it like Minecraft. You do all these customizations, build bases, and all you're going to do is go from planet to planet building various bases. It could be that. I don't know. I'm not going to judge on that scope. Okay? But we're going to end it there. Okay? Now, what I'm going to do is we're going to... Oh, let me back something up real quick. Now, remember what he mentioned. Remember what I mentioned. Talking about influencers, developers, and even corporate. Let me show you some influencers, big tech reviewers and all this stuff. This is Tom Warren. I'm going to raise it up. It's going to be interesting to see how often the PS5 GPU and CPU clocks run at their top frequencies. It looks like the real performance of the PS5 will be in the 9TF area, and Microsoft is claiming sustained 12T flop performance on the Xbox Series X. There's always going to be a gap. This is the guy I was telling you. He claimed he's a developer and said he actually developed games during the PS2 days, I think it was, for PlayStation. He was even on the Other Gamers podcast, RDX. Now, this is what I'm talking about. There's a difference between fanboys talking trash, but when you got media influencers, reporters, tech analysts, and a person that worked for PlayStation, and they're saying something, it changes a whole information. Things get different. Right? Look what he said. He's using his position, right? This is what you call making a point based on the position of profession, right? Or proficiency. I am a developer. I have connections. So listen to me. So under those conditions, oh, he's a developer. He has experience. He has conditions. Therefore, there could be credibility on what he is saying. Look what he said. I chatted to a few devs and they have confirmed the power difference is quite staggering. However, they have said it doesn't mean you can't make good games on the PS5. These fanboys clearly don't care about that and are massively rattled. Well, one, why are you even making this statement? What's the point? If you know PS5 is still going to make great games, then why even bring up the power? What did you try to accomplish with this statement? You want the fanboys to be rattled. The problem is you lied. So who's worse? The fanboys or you who are using your profession and historical reference and your connections to push an agenda that was proven to be a lie? So who end up looking silly? Is you. You put your face, your profession, your name out there. And now you look dumb. This is the things that will happen. And I'm telling you all this so that way some of you who was not in the know, you get context. You need context. Some of you who are Starfield and trying to figure out why is this happening, now I'm pulling you in to see what was going on. This was not just a console or fanboy stuff. It was people, developers, tech enthusiasts, and the company doing the same things. Look how crazy this got. Oh, this is another one. This was like an undercover developer. Look how crazy they made this person made Xbox Series X seem beyond everything. Even the Matrix is impressive. That only scratched the surface of Xbox tech. But on PS5, that already fully tapped with tendency to overheat in the long run. No power left in the PS5, even to do auto HDR, VR, etc. Meaning you can't do VR, which ended up not being true. In fact, not only did it not end up being true, PlayStation used VR better than Xbox. We'll talk about that. They need to push that TV marketing twist. Look how crazy. So this is Dust Golem, another influencer. I think he was with Reset Era, one of those gaming sites. He was at Mod. Look at the nonsense he pushed. But people should get ready for the real possibility that the PS5 is going to end up being more expensive. No. Console between the two. No. I'm trying to say much here as I was asked not to, but prepare yourself. Which does put Xbox X in a position it will be the blank. Or it will be the less expensive and more powerful console. I use REA as an example, but I heard from other devs that PS5 struggles with 4K games in particular, so you'll see a lot of fake 4K. You've seen a lot of fake 4K on Xbox, right? That doesn't matter to some, but get ready for that too. Xbox Series X doesn't have the same problem. This was all made up. It was fake. His Resident Evil 8 example, he tried to claim that the PS5 was having trouble to run Resident Evil 8 at 1080p 60. Once people found out that he got called out and that he made it all up, look at his excuse. I think console warring is really stupid. The reason I shared them initially is I felt things were two-sided despite knowing some accounts of what was about to happen. In some ways, I do regret speaking out, but also reiterate my own reasons for sharing things. He felt bad that Xbox was getting so negative news, he had to do something to balance it out. And how did he do it? By lying, making stuff up, making stuff that's not true. I'm bringing in context on this whole 60 FPS debate, okay? It got so bad, like I said, professionals had to get involved, right? Andre Pacino, dollar bet, within a year from its launch, gamers will fully appreciate that the PS5 is one of the most revolutionary, inspired home consoles ever designed, and will feel silly for having spent that energy arguing about teraflops and other similarly misunderstood specs. You had certain developers that were ready to going out and be like, enough of the nonsense. You are all making this up. It is not real. Now, most developers stood quiet because they knew if they go out and try to defend the truth, they wouldn't look like they're defending the truth. They would look like, oh, you're just a PS5 fanboy. And they could not put their professional career because they were also making games for the Xbox Series X. So they had to stay shut and just watch all this nonsense happening. So when guys like Chris Granell, I'm talking to devs, he talked to nobody. Because if you look in the community of devs, none of them said they talked to him about that. None of them telling them that there's a staggering power difference. None of them. So who are you talking to? Because the big devs are like, he ain't talking to me. It was all nonsense. And that's where it got crazy, right? Because the reality is this, right? And hear me out. Let me look at something. Oh, okay. If you are just anticipating what the Xbox Series X can do or what you think it can do, that's fine. Make an assumption. Do what you got to do. It's okay. But what ended up happening is they couldn't just stop there. They had to go to the other side on a console they don't really care about and drag that down before you even have the opportunity to launch and actually critiquing on what it can do and not what you think it can do. It had to be important to prop up Xbox and drag the hell out of the PlayStation 5. And that's really important, right? Because you see, if you look at PlayStation's first party, all their games provide performance options and beyond. Right? Now we're gonna cut to Dustin's video. I'm gonna let it play for about 8 minutes. I could chop it up, but I'm gonna holistically talk about the whole conversation. All right. So let me put that up there, and now let's listen to him. For context, he's responding to Oh No It's Alex. Oh No Alex is saying, the 60 FPS, 30 FPS, and console gamers should not accept that. I agree with him this gen. Now, the reason why I agree with him this gen is because I personally believe these consoles are powerful enough to provide the option for 60 frames. This is not the PS4 or the Xbox One, which had anemic hardware. I mean, the CPU was literally laptop level CPU. They invested good quality hardware, and I think it's enough. Now, I even think it's enough to get 60 frames. Granted, there's going to be concessions, just like a lot of things, just like PC, but these consoles could provide a level of decent quality for the gamer that wants 60 frames. But let's play this for a little bit.
YouTuber I know who goes by Oh No It's Alex made a video talking about how, it's titled Starfield 30 FPS lock is terrible for Xbox, and for gamers this is not acceptable. I thought I would watch it and respond to him because he's a coward and won't talk to me. And I thought I would just give my rebuttals here on the stream. So buckle up, everybody. We're going to do an Alex.
I'm not going to slap my leg. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing that.
Alex video. Let's go. Okay, so let's dive right into it, and I'm just going to watch and respond.
Video, I kind of want to make this quick statement. I really do believe that Starfield will, in fact, more than likely, be a good game.
Well, great video so far, Alex. I agree with all your points.
A lot of the RPG
All right, so I think it's a good intermission. I know I said we're going to interrupt, but I think it's a good intermission. Before we continue the conversation further, let me give my initial thoughts, or not even initial thoughts about Starfield, but how do I feel about the game in terms of, am I going to play it? Yes, I am going to play Starfield. Let me look at my PlayStation ID. Puerto77. Same exact name. Look it up. I do not have my account blocked. You can see the games I played. If you look and you scroll through, I played Skyrim, and I think most of the DLC, except for one, I think. I played Fallout 4. I played Fallout New Vegas. I played Fallout 3. I also played Oblivion, all the DLC. I don't think Oblivion's on there because I think at the time it didn't have trophy support because it was a PlayStation 3. But I will tell you. Oh, and also you can look at Elder Scrolls Online. I have over 400 hours in that game. On just Elder Scrolls Online alone, right? I do play Bethesda games. In fact, between Bethesda and Activision, I'm more partial to Bethesda more than ABK. That's why I don't really care about ABK or whatever. I actually enjoy Bethesda. Fallout games are amazing, right? So, I love those games. So, Starfield, I don't even have the high expectation you guys have. You guys are looking for gen-defining, game of the gen experience. I just want more Fallout, Elder Scrolls, but in space. And I'm good. If I get that nice feeling, maybe better refined mechanics and all that stuff, I'm going to love it. Right? Because, again, I thoroughly enjoy Fallout 3. I thoroughly enjoy Fallout 4, New Vegas. I really love those games. So I have no issues with that. So I'm going to play that game. What's funny is some of the people I talk to, they're trying to talk to me about Starfield and Bethesda games. And when I look for the ones that actually don't hide their accounts, when I look at their gamer tag, they haven't played all those games that I played. Majority of people I interact with, I play more Bethesda games in general, to include Doom, Wolfenstein, all that stuff. I played and beat more games than the people trying to teach me about Bethesda. It's just weird. But I said that to let you know that I am looking forward to Starfield. And I'm looking forward to the future Elder Scrolls and Fallout. Absolutely love those games. And I'm going to play them. Period.
mechanics they showed on Sunday look really enticing to someone like myself who likes deep systems and mechanics. It seems as though they've taken some lessons they've learned from Fallout 4 and 76 and really just reversing those lessons, learning from them, and applying something new to something that is actually probably going to be a great set of series of games coming to us in the future. Now, with all of that being said, however, I can't believe this is going to be a hot take warning. I truly feel that Starfield should be 60 frames per second.
Alex plays on PC. Alex plays on PC. It will be 60 frames per second. So we're talking just about console here, right? Would it be nice if there was an option? Sure. But they've said, hey, look, it's going to be at 30. They got out in front of it. They said it's not going to be 60. Phil Spencer saying it's a creative choice. I mean, I feel like that's kind of like a misdirect. What's he going to do? Come out and be like, yeah, the Xbox Series X isn't powerful enough to handle it at 60. No, he's not going to say that. But I do think that it seems like Bethesda wants to push graphical fidelity versus frame rate. Now, initially, I would have agreed with Alex's take. I do prefer to play most of my games at 60 frames per second. However, there is one game that kind of broke me out of that. It's Cyberpunk. Cyberpunk 2077, I played it on like a stupid machine, 5950X. You know, it had a 3090 at the time. tons of RAM. It was a spec that I put together and Power GPU put together. It was a monster at the time, and I played the whole game at 60, but it just didn't run that well. Even on an insane machine, like that game still had optimization issues. So when they put it on console initially, it was only for previous gen and ran at 30, and at least once they got the crashes fixed, it seemed fine, right? Like it was fairly stable on modern consoles, somewhat. And as long as there aren't frame rate dips, I can see a game like Cyberpunk 2077 or Starfield being 30 and not having a lot of issues. But let's hear from Alex a little bit further.
We'll go.
So I changed my mind. I'm going to have to compartment because I think if I wait too long, it forces you guys to remember everything. And I don't want to do that. So I just, after listening to him, I'm thinking if I don't stop and talk, it's forcing you guys to remember. And that's not right. It should be on, the onus is on me. So here's the thing where I disagree, especially with his reference to Cyberpunk. If you've been with my channel and you listen to me, right? Who is ultimately responsible for the performance of their console, right? Now, some of you knew, so you don't know the context of the conversation I always had with the audience, right? But I always said the first party platform holder who makes the console, they're the ones responsible for the best experience. So his reference Cyberpunk, right? Made by CD Projekt Red. Here's my question. So CD Projekt Red makes Xbox, that's their console. CD Projekt Red, PlayStation, that belongs to them? No. That is not their box. That is not their concern. So if they release a 30 frame per second game or whatever, right? Sure. We can still hold them to the standard, but they could come out and easily say, hey, I make games for... And let's look at the reality with Cyberpunk. They made it for the Xbox One. They made it for the PS4, Xbox Series X, Xbox Series S, PlayStation 5, and PC in the various architectures. They made all of that. So their priority isn't to maximize the performance on the PS5 and Xbox Series X. They're a third-party developer. They have so much to do, whatever. And they bit more they can chew, in my opinion, right? That is a far cry different than a first-party developer, right? But this is not a first-party developer under the first-party publishing who actually made the console. The console is yours. If you can't do it, then who can? As I said before, PlayStation, right? All their first-party games have performance options. That doesn't mean third party does it. You know, they may do it, they may not do it. It is what it is, open. So don't really agree with that statement, putting Cyberpunk and Starfield in the same line. Like it or not, Bethesda is a first party studio. They're first party. That means they have the full faith and backing and confidence of Xbox, the people who made the console. They literally have access to every single, even things that are NDA or secret, or like, oh, we're not telling third-party developers yet. We'll reveal all these extra things later on. Bethesda doesn't have to wait no more. They literally are seeing everything live. Well, at least they should. It will blow my mind if there are things still hidden from Bethesda or any first-party studio. That wouldn't make sense.
One even step further than that and say console games today, or all games in general, should at the very minimum be 60 frames per second as the standard. I don't...
No. I think we're actually entering a time where developers have been tired of sacrificing visual fidelity for 60 frames. I got flamed for this tweet where I said 60 frames per second is a buzzword. It's not a buzzword. The way the tweet was phrased was I was saying it's a buzzword for console fanboys who like to use it to throw around like the frame rate graphs that we all see, because the most recent one that I've seen is Final Fantasy 16 getting dunked on because it's performance mode on the demo at least, which, yeah, it'll get updated or whatever. But the performance mode right now is running at like 32 frames per second. So... yeah, you can say that. And games like Returnal that run in 4K, it's not actually running in 4K. Most games are upscaling from 1080p at this point. So developers are being forced to make this choice. Well, do we have our game run at what, 720 native, but so it can hit that 60 frames per second target? And they're saying, no, we don't want to present our game at that resolution. So I think not every game needs to be 60 frames per second. It just doesn't, right? And let's say Last of Us Part 3 came out and it was 30 frames. I think people would lose it. But I think Sony has like Insomniac on their team, and Insomniac has just done magical things with Spider-Man. And there's a lot of great developers out there who have figured out how to make the console hardware hit that 60 frames per second target. But I don't think it should be blanket for every game. I think The Last of Us is fine at 30 frames per second on console. And if you want to play at those higher frame rates, assuming they figure out how to make it for PC, they start building or play it on PC. Like it's almost coming full circle, Alex, where I feel like, or whoever's watching and thinking about this, where I feel like the console market is actually sort of resetting, right? PCs are going to be the experience where you can push and pull all the parameters that you want and hit the target frame rate and visual fidelity that you want if you know what you're doing. And consoles, you're just going to kind of get what you get. The problem is the marketing. I'm going to let Alex continue because I know he gets into this, but the problem is these boxes have been marketed with buzzwords, which is the point I was getting at. I didn't make it very well, but buzzwords like 8K on the PlayStation box and capable of up to 4K, 120 frames per second. And console gamers have gotten their taste. They've gotten their first taste of what 120 frames per second looks and feels like in Gears of War multiplayer. And once you open Pandora's box with frame rate, like I've been playing Destiny 120 or higher for a long time, it is very noticeable when you go back to those 30 frames per second. It seems like I'm kind of getting into a whole other conversation here. Let's hear from Alex.
Understand.
So, Destin, you said no to Alex. I'm saying no to you. Now, Alex said 60 minimum. Now, I would caveat, me personally, is consoles provide 60 frame performance options. A console may not be able, depending on the game, may not be able to do native 4K 60 or even dynamic 4K 60. But the performance options, you have this. The problem, Destin, you said need, doesn't need. We're not talking about need. We're talking about providing options. Oh, I talked to developers. They don't want to sacrifice quality. You can still provide the quality. It is called quality mode. Provide your quality mode. Cool. But for those that want performance, provide performance. Providing performance does not negate the visual quality that the developer. Because like it or not, you probably know better than I do, people will play Starfield at 1080p second, 1080p 60 frames per second. Dustin, it's going to happen. Why? Because you can do it on PC. Now, all this conversation about, the quality, we're going to have to nip that in the bud. We're going to nip that in the bud right now. I cannot believe even you or anybody has the nerve to pull the quality part, right? They want to show at the best quality visuals on Xbox. That's impossible. You can't. You want to know why? You want to know why? Because I'm going to show you something. That gets thrown out the window because of this. Oh man, I gotta show, sorry. I gotta show it. This is like so embarrassing. Where you at? Get back here. Okay, yeah, I gotta do it this way. There you go, boom, there you go. Alright, wow, I look stupid. But anyway, you see like the movies. Here we go, Rear Forces is here. Okay guys, anyway. You still wanna have the conversation of best quality visuals? You sure about that? What is it? That little meme? You sure about that? You sure about that? You sure about that? Best quality visuals. We're gonna talk about best quality visuals on Xbox on Starfield. You sure about that? Oh no, but I'm talking a series. You cannot ignore or go Bird Box. We're not Sandra Bullock. In fact, I would argue, and you probably know this, Dustin, or you probably know this. I'm sorry, Dustin, that the majority of Xbox Series gamers are who? Who are the majority? If you were to wager, Series S owner, Series X owner, which is the bigger population? The Series S. We all know that's probably the one that sold the most between the two. Whether it's due to availability, price point, whatever the logical reason behind it, this right here, this is the one. And with Starfield being on Game Pass, where do you think Starfield will be played the most? Which visual quality you think more Xbox gamers are going to see on a console? It's going to be this one. So you can't pull the whole Todd Howard wants the best fidelity quality visuals when this guy exists. It's impossible. This guy's not built for the best visual quality. It's just not. Now you can argue it's going to have the best visuals for what the Series S can do in its own right, sure. But representation of console, this is the bar right here, okay? So why can't we get this version on the Xbox Series X and bump up the frames? Why can't we do that? What annoys me the most about this conversation is, again, I go back to PlayStation. Look at this. All right? I'm going to move. Let me do this. Let me move myself up here. I'll put myself up here. What you see here, right, is what PlayStation does to try, as a first party, to try to give PlayStation gamers the best options possible. Let's go back, to launch. When Sony announced that, VR and VR will not be available day one on the console, that it will be an update as time goes on. Once again, end of the world. From influencers, not just influencers, again, not just fanboys with the 2 follower count. We're talking influencers, tech enthusiasts, the whole shebang. VR is oh my God, VR. Now, I did not excuse PlayStation for lack of VR. I wasn't one of those like, well, only 0.002% of TVs have VR. I'm sorry. I didn't excuse it. Why? Because I literally bought, before launch, I bought a Samsung Q80T. It had VR. I made sure it had VR, HDMI 2.1, all the bells and whistles. Right? I want it. I want the technology. So I didn't excuse it. Okay? But Sony didn't have it. And it was getting bashed. Xbox had it. Day one. VR, all the low level, signal ALM, all that stuff. HDR, auto, all that bells and whistles. PlayStation 5 didn't have it. Another knock. Another attack. All that stuff. Now, what's interesting, in 2021, when PlayStation finally updated the PS5 and got VR, all these performance options actually was first on Spider-Man. Miles Morales, Spider-Man Remastered, and then eventually Rift Apart, and then Horizon Forbidden West. Sony started using this. They didn't just simply say, hey, you got VR, 120 hertz, all this stuff. Go with God, Jesus take the wheel, like Xbox did. Because to me, that's the only thing Xbox did. They had it from the start, but they didn't do anything with it other than its core function of, hey, when you got a game and it's not really locked 60, don't worry, VR, if you play with VR, it's going to smooth it out. 120 hertz, hey, you get 120 FPS games, and that's really it. Just the basic core function. Sony, despite having it late, despite PlayStation having it late, they went beyond. They said, hey, we're going to do more than just provide the capability and walk away. We're going to take advantage and see what more we can do. As you can see, this is an example. Graphics modes for PS5, right? You have the performance side. We'll go all the way to the left. 1440p to 2160p, so it's dynamic with a 60 FPS target, right? So pretty much 60 FPS is what you want. Favorite performance mode with high frame rate. That means if you enable 120 hertz with 120 hertz compatible TV and you got HDMI 2.1, you will play at a locked 1440p, so it's no variable, right? But they're gonna unlock the frame rates and you could get up to 60 FPS, right? If you play favor performance with high, with 120 hertz and VRR, high frame rate resolution, right? High frame rate and VR, 1440p again, unlock 60. But in that one, it smooths out. So you get the smoothest experience possible. Look at quality mode. Native 4K, right? Native 4K, 30 FPS target. That's quality mode. Apparently the mode developers truly want. Well, guess what? You got it. If native 4K 30 frames is the very best look and appearance that the developer want, they still did it. You still got it. But they went beyond that. Quality mode with high frame rate. 1800p to 2160p with a 40 FPS target. And then quality mode, high frame rate with VR, 1800p, 2160p. This time 40 FPS target, but they unlock it. Some people got up to 50 frames or higher on that mode. And I played on that mode. Incredible experience. Incredible experience. You see, all of this is options. All of that. What you see on the screen is options. But they still provided, assuming they want the one version that looks the best, favor quality, well, you did it anyway. Not a big deal, right? Now, just in case anyone tries to go at me saying, well, if this was Sony and PlayStation, you would accept 30 FPS. No, I would be vocal saying this is not acceptable, especially when I'm used to this, right? Especially when I'm used to this, right? The argument with 30 FPS is you don't have a choice. Listen, as a console, if you're on an Xbox Series console, you don't have a choice. But that doesn't mean you can't voice your opinion at Microsoft, so that way they know, you know what? Our fan base is really upset about this. Why don't we try to do something with this? Why don't we try to do what PlayStation does with VR and high frame rate and, provide 4K 45, 4K 40, unlock the frame rates with VRR. Just provide various options. Sony's doing it. The company that provided VR late is doing it better than the ones who had it day one. That's absolutely insane. The possibility for options is there. It's there, right? Now, going back, if you think I would damage control, I went on Twitter, right, when Sony provided and got the VR update, and they updated games with all those high frame rate VRR solutions, I said, and this you can see it, July 2022, and you're going to see a couple of tweets from me. I said, now that Sony has this, I expect these options to be in their first party games day one. They shouldn't be updated later. I don't want to play a game at launch without these options, and then they update it 3-4 months later. Now I have to replay it just to experience these options. When I played the game the first time and I experienced the game the first time, I want it. This is one of the things I said, right? When Nesbot said God of War Ragnarok will support 4K 30 FPS as well as dynamic 4K 60 mode, I replied, quote and said, the only issue I have is why not provide the VR update advantages day one. I understand Forbidden West and games released before VR, but games after VR update should have those updates day one. I have people, Guapzilla, he's a good dude, right? We have great conversations. He said optimization. VR isn't the priority since it's a feature utilized by less than 1% of gamers, and also PS4 doesn't support it at all. This is my reply. Most gamers don't play in 4K even either. I guess Sony can stop making 4K games? I paid for a PS5 and it does VR. Not concerned with what PS4 can or can't do, which is a reasonable response. I was understanding before, but going forward, we cannot accept this. VRR is here. This needs to be day one. They have to figure it out. Then other people, right? Says it's been 3 months since the update went live. You want them in 3 months to just add a feature they weren't going for a while. They're focusing on polishing the game. That's an honest question. This was my reply. You act like it was a surprise to them. They all had access. Guerrilla, Insomniac were catching up. God of War is not even out yet. What I was trying to tell him is Santa Monica knows this is happening. It's not like it was a secret between Insomniac and only Insomniac had exclusive access to this technology. They all know it's coming. And they're still, to his reply, and they're still working on polishing what they made. These games were done, all their focus were on VR and updates. They still have to polish the game they're making. This is my other question. If that's the case, or how they didn't give a damn because we'll just accept what they do, they're not done with what they started working on. But in 3 to 4 months, you want them to have VR, 40 hertz mode, and everything. And when the game comes out buggy, you'll be the first complaining Insomniac was done with all their games. That's why they could do it. Right? Someone else replied, those probably take time and they prefer to focus on the game with features the majority will have, and to be honest, most polished they can be. No, how about they do their job and take advantage of what the console offers? The console offers VR, the update's already out. I expect these features, games, utilize it day one, right? And guess what happened day one? This was all day one. This was all day one. This happened day one. They did it. No excuses, right? Their excuse in the beginning is because they didn't have the VR technology. They have the VR technology, and all these gamers make excuses. So even PlayStation can do make excuses, but you have to find guys, people to level set. Don't feel sorry for them. They want to increase game prices to $70 and all this stuff. Well, it's gonna come with a tax. You gotta do your job. We'll go back to Destin again. Here we go, Destin.
And how this is somehow all of a sudden this massive hot take that I had to say on Twitter the other day, and really just people just trying to defend 30 frames per second in the replies.
I don't know why he feels like, I'm sure some people are out there defending it. I don't think that particular genre needs 60 frames per second to be an amazing experience. I think it can still be an amazing experience at 30 frames per second, and 60 frames would be nice. And I'm willing to bet that when the next generation of hardware or whatever comes out, they offer that. It's just not there right now.
Even crazier is that people...
Again, Destin, you're arguing the need, right? What we're point is the options. You cannot tell me that there is something inherently wrong with them figuring out, let's provide a performance mode. Again, can't argue fidelity graphics because the Xbox Series S exists. So from a console perspective, there is a low bar of Starfield that's coming out. It is a low bar. So you already messed up on that, right? I could maybe understand if Tom Howard said, hey, we are concerned with the fidelity and quality, so this game would not be playable on the Series S. Obviously, that's never going to happen, right? But if they did that, then maybe there's some credence to the whole graphics and how the game's supposed to be. And if they said this game is beyond the capabilities of the Series S because of graphic fidelity and all that stuff, okay, then all right, I'll be like, wow, this is serious. But that's not the case. The Series S is literally, Street Fighter 6 looks like Clay Fighters on that thing. It's literally the lowest bar. It's going to have the lowest settings. There's going to be settings and auto effects. There's going to be so much stuff missing from that version. And guess what? Microsoft is okay providing the majority of Xbox console gamers with a version of Starfield that's going to be missing so much. It's going to be missing a whole lot of stuff. Shadow effects, texture pop-ins. It's just going to, you know, we all know. Well, if it's good enough for the Series S, why can't that version be on the Series X and play at 60 frames? Because at least you get double the frames. And hell, lower it down to 1080p. Trust me, 1080p, 60 frames as a choice will be fine for any gamer. If you say to yourself, oh, hell no, I am not playing this game at 1080p, I don't care how many frames you're giving me, then select quality mode and play your game at 4K 30. Choices. It's a beautiful thing. Choice. It's a beautiful thing.
People that I truly respect in the industry, and I still respect, by the way, are saying 30 FPS is perfectly acceptable in some weird, honestly strange capacity. We've had massive upgrades in technology, even though it's only been a few years with these new consoles coming out. And the fact that 3 years into this console life cycle, we're now hitting a brick wall and going back to 30 frames per second really just goes to show that a couple of things are in play. Either one, these consoles were never as powerful as they were being touted about.
Ding, 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 ding. He's right. That part I agree with. The buzzwords on the console are just nonsense. How many games run at native 4K? Like what, the RE engine I think does it. The Gears games on the Series X are using, I believe, VRS to upscale to 4K and then hit that target, right? There's some really cool technology out there that is allowing some of those older games to hit that target. But he is right on this front. There is a lot of marketing jargon being shoved down everybody's throat, and he's just dead on the money there. I don't know what else to say about it.
I have a question for you, Destin. How many PCs are running games at native 4K 60? The majority of PC gamers aren't playing these games at native 4K 60 either. The 4090, the 3080 Ti, they're not the standard. They're not the predominant majority of PC gamings. PC gamers are playing at 1080p 14. I don't understand why it's okay for a PC gamer to play at 1080p 60, 1440p 60, but for a console gamer, we have a higher standard when the console's not the higher standard. I don't understand this lot. Destin, lots of PC gamers are going to play Starfield at 1080p. They're going to play at 1080p. The PC gamers that actually have the hardware to run this game native 4K 60 are the minority of PC gamers. They're the chosen few, right? The master race. Majority is 1440p, 1080p. Remember when PS5, another elbow drop that people try to do, boom on the PS5. No 1440p monitor support. Oh my God, how can I'm stuck. Now we're going to cry like native 4K is the standard? The majority of the gamers, right, across the board are not playing on native 4K across all their games, right? Even on PC. You have to have the hardware for it. Lots of PC gamers are fine with 1080p, 1440p fidelity. That's why, you have these cheaper low-end cards, the 3050s, the 3040s, these lower cards that are really geared towards 1080p gaming, whatever. It's because you have lots of PC gamers that still play at 1080p. It's not that big of a deal. Native 4K is not that big a deal. That's why there's DLSS, temporal injection, all this stuff. Okay? The big plus, I would say, this generation, to which almost every gamer is enjoying, is the frames. Okay? Do this. Which you think would be more noticeable to a gamer? To a casual gamer. Not even hardcore people who watch your podcast, my podcast, whatever. We're just gonna take a casual gamer that plays Madden. Just plays Madden. Madden football. Those guys, that's really the only game they buy. They buy Madden and Call of Duty. That's it. Casual gamers. They go home, they play some Madden with their boys, they play some Call of Duty. What if you were to do this experiment? You take those gamers, you put them in a room, have them play Madden native 4K 60 frames. They play it for a while. Send them out to lunch, come back. Now you put them on a TV that's like 1440p or whatever. They're no longer playing. Same looking TV. The TV looks exactly the same. But the TV now only does 1440p. It's not a native 4K display. And they play Madden. Same frame and everything. How many of them will notice that it's no longer native 4K? How many? How many will be like, oh my God, I see missing pixels? Probably very few. They're just going to keep playing the game and whatever. Right? Now, do another test. Again, you got native 4K, 60 frames for Madden, and they're playing it. Then you send them out to lunch. Hey, have some lunch. Then you come back, and they're playing a version of Madden. Still native 4K, but it's locked at 30. Destin, Have you ever played Madden at 30 frames? Because it happened. There was one occasion where Madden launched at 30 frames, and it was the first Madden that came out for the PlayStation 3. Every Madden gamer who played on that was like, no, I'm getting an Xbox. Because you can clearly feel the difference. It was terrible. It was absolutely terrible. It's also, and I know this is a little bit anecdotal, right? Anecdotal evidence, right? Anecdotal, right? But my brother, who's not a hardcore gamer at all on any level, knows nothing about technology, right? He had the PS3 too, and he played that Madden, and he called me. He's like, hey, something's wrong with the game. He didn't know what a frame rate was. He didn't know. He didn't understand. He thought it was broken, whatever, and I explained to him. And he's like, is it always going to be like this? Because I'll get an Xbox. I told him, I don't know. I think they're going to update it, whatever. But eventually, you know, the next Madden was fine, and then that's it. Everybody's happy. Most people don't even remember that. I guarantee, even at the casual level, going from 60 to 30, in a game that you always play 60, they're going to notice, holy cow, something's wrong. Versus 4K, native 4K to 1440, whatever. This generation, the biggest push this generation really is two main things for me, right? Sure, you got the art tracing, whatever. But I think the biggest thing is the higher frame rates, which really is a huge part, right? For me, one, and the loading. Going from SSD and reduce the loading time it's a huge deal. I went back to some PS4 games that didn't have that advantage, and it's like, whoa, it really takes away from the experience, right? Frame rate is very noticeable. Between temporal injection, everybody moved down from the term native 4K. Gamers don't really care about that. More gamers will notice frame rates than resolutions. It's just a reality. And there was like surveys done on, hey, what mode you're choosing. Most gamers chose the performance mode.
Which is what I truly think is the issue. 2, a lot of game designers and game developers or even art designers are trying to push the boundary of what games look like, either in a more realistic sense or anything else along that nature. Or 3, the game is...
Well, you know what? He's right on too. They are trying to push visuals and what they're capable of in the engine. And sometimes they make that choice to sacrifice the frame rate to accomplish that on console. I think that one's also correct. Developers have actually come forward and said as much.
Honestly hard.
But what is this sacrifice? Gentlemen. What sacrifice are we talking about? You can still have this. You see this? This is possibly the best version when you look at it, right? To be honest, I would argue this is probably the best version. But if you want native 4K, let's say that's the goal. You got to have native 4K. No temporal injection, no dynamic resolution, nothing. Just native 4K. So then do your native 4K. It's called quality mode. Boom! You got your native 4K. And if you can only do native 4K at 30 FPS, then provide it. Here you go. You got it. If that's what you want gamers to see, provide it. What does this have to do with all of this here? Like, one does not cancel out the other, right? Unless you're trying to say, no, I'm going to force gamers to play a 4K 30. And that logic doesn't make sense to me, right? There is no what you would call a sacrifice. That's a terrible explanation for this. Visual quality is not being sacrificed. What's being sacrificed is choice. These consoles are capable of providing choice. It's just that the developers are doing. And in my opinion, let's talk about this for everybody in the audience. Let's go to the multiverse. Let's rewrite this planet. This world that we're in, let's change it up. Let's change it to a world where Xbox doesn't have an Xbox Series S. That was never announced. Only the Series X. And Microsoft never announced day and date on PC. They do it kind of like the way Sony is doing it now, where they will launch the PC version later on because they're focusing on their console, this one console. Let's ignore this strategy of play games anywhere, that you're at the center of the experience. So we're going to even put this on the phone. Scratch all that. Multiverse. Different universe. Xbox Series X is the priority. All developers will focus on that. PC later on. No existence of the Series S. Gone. That never happened. You're telling me we will have the same result for Starfield if Bethesda is a first party and they're only making the game for the Series X, PC will come out 2-3 years later. In this world, results the same. Oh, Starfield 30, there's nothing we can do about it. Full visual quality. No chance of performance options. Oh, and in this world, Microsoft also does this. They are intact with VR and high frame rate, and they know how to use it to push boundaries. So, no Xbox Series X, no day and day with PC, and they have the capability of VR, high frame rate, just like PlayStation does. So in this world, same exact result. Nope, sorry, Starfield at 30, deal with it. Come on now. Right? What's happening is Microsoft is not pushing the boundaries in terms of publisher. And Bethesda, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, Bethesda, really, the only benefit they're getting from being under Microsoft is more money. That's really it. Bethesda's still doing Bethesda things, and now they just get more checks, so sure, they could delay a game, but that actual tutelage and expertise to make the most out of Xbox, they're probably not getting much from the publisher, right? As compared to PlayStation, right? And we hear this from David Jaffe and other developers, right? That the first party developers get first class service from the publisher. They get everything to try to make the very best games they possibly can on the PlayStation console. So things like VR, high frame rate, and all this stuff is possible under the first party banner. And anybody that wants it and tries to go, I'm surprised more third party don't do it, or at least third party that has exclusive relationships with PlayStation, because it might be more effort, more work, which is probably why we don't see it as much, right? We only see it from Sony first party because, again, who's responsible for the PlayStation 5 or any console? It's the console manufacturer, the first party. So at a minimum, these first party developers will deliver these experiences, right? But again, in a multi-universe world where Xbox is only the Series X and no day one PC, I guarantee Starfield will have performance options. They're just not putting in the work. Now, I'm not saying they're lazy. I'm not saying that. It could be constraints. They need the game to launch. It's just too much to manage because they got multiple platforms to deal with. They got a Series S they got to balance out, and then on multiple PC architecture, and it's all got to happen the same day. So it is a lot of work. So guess what? 4K 30, buddy. I'm sorry. It is what it is. There's too much to deal with. And I think that's what it is. And then on top of that, you're probably not getting much from the Xbox staff. Like, hey, you got any tips and tricks? Yeah, the mesh shaders ain't really... We're still in the lab. We'll get back to you. The tools. So, all right, 4K 30. The only thing they're getting is just money. But no true tech support to really advance their stuff. Oh, well, it is what it is. And I think that's what's really happening for Xbox. So when these guys are talking about consoles are relatively weak and can't do 60 FPS, I think that's an Xbox Series problem. From third party, I can see third party only providing 4K 30 because, again, they're third party. They're not ultimately responsible for providing the best experience possible. They got a lot of games to worry about. I mean, a lot of platforms. A lot of configurations to worry about. It is what it is. But from a first-party standpoint, they could get their games at 60 frames and provide these options. They can do it. At least Sony can with the PS5. Xbox, I don't know what's going on that side of the house. But given the fact that Flight Simulator is 30 frames with no improvements, again, not even trying to do VR high frame rate update. Redfall, I don't even know why that game was 30 FPS and can't do 60 FPS. That's mind-blowing. Right? And now our third game is coming out at 30 FPS only. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's happening. But I will say it is not a console problem. I think this is more an Xbox problem. On the PlayStation problem, you see Sony leading the way. They're giving you 60 frame options and they're going above that. We got to give props where props is due. PlayStation 5 is doing what exactly is expected of the console. Provide those frame rate options, and Sony's going even further with VR and high frame rate, so they're taking it a step forward, right? Just provide it.
Horribly optimized and should not even be released at this moment in time. I honestly believe it is a
Okay, the optimization one. I'm back. My son woke up. I'm just going to pick up where I left off.
And should not even be released at this moment in time. I honestly believe it is a combination of all three of those actual factors. And
Well, I mean, Bethesda games, they're just not optimized very well. Even Skyrim, like.
So I'm going to stop there because we're at the 9-minute mark. Because now it's going beyond to theoretical. It's this video is 40 minutes, but it goes deep dive. I just want to finish off with this. Okay, I don't think it's a console problem. I think it's a prioritization problem. The consoles are built well, or at least I think they should be, right? I can't really understand what's going on with the Xbox Series X. What I really don't understand is how did Sony get ahead of techniques to make games run better from a first-party perspective when Microsoft had all these tools and stuff from the beginning. In my opinion, when it comes to the Series X, it was put together and there was a lot of assumptions made. Assumptions of what mesh shaders can do, what VRS can do, throw in VR and whatever. I think the console was designed well from a text perspective, meaning the capacitors and resistors and the motherboards, but I don't think Microsoft actually had a vision on what to do with all the technology and tools. They went on autopilot, while Sony was very deliberate with their stuff. Consider this. PlayStation and Microsoft both had access to AMD. They were working with AMD very closely. And I will argue Sony may have even a bigger, deeper relationship with AMD than even Microsoft does. Why? Because the CEO of AMD is Lisa Su. Everybody knows her, or if you're not. The thing about her is she used to work with IBM decades ago. Right? The reason why I am mentioning that is because she was, you can argue, the mother. Wait for it. She is the mother of the cell processor. The cell processor was a joint venture between Sony and IBM. So that processor that was in the PS3, she helped make that. She's the mother of the cell processor. So Sony's been dealing with her for decades, going back to the PS3. The reason why I say all that to say this, all those tools Microsoft bragged about, RDNA 2 mesh shaders, Sony knows those tools are well. They see it. They had access to it. So why didn't they jump on it? How come they didn't jump on the full suite of 2.0 and all this stuff? They clearly saw it, right? So something Sony saw is like, you know what? We really don't need all of that. We're going to focus more on the actual hardware design and stuff, accelerators, all that stuff. Because we have an actual long-term vision of how we're going to use the SSD, how we're going to utilize VRR and the 120 hertz. They had a plan. Okay? This was not an accident, people. Okay? This is not something that Sony woke up, right, and did and just said, boom. This, what we see here, that was in the works. This was their vision. This is what they wanted to get to before the console even launched. They had a long-term blueprint on how they're really going to show great performance, great graphics, just a great overall experience across the board. You know, from their techniques of dynamic resolution, temporal injection, to the various frame rates, to the haptic feedback. They had a holistic approach on how they're going to launch their console, and I think Sony just overall had a better design, better forefront, better expectation and vision in the long term of how they're going to have PlayStation gamers enjoy their games. I don't think Microsoft deep dive into that. I think Microsoft really relied on power, T-flops, and these tools that RDNA is doing. And now when they launch the console, they're like, man, this didn't work out. What do we got to do to catch up? They probably never planned to use VR and high frame rates to do what Sony did. That probably was in the books. I would imagine, I would like to think they are doing that. They should add that. They should add that capability to Xbox. And you guys will love it because a lot of you guys have TVs that are HDMI 2.1. You have VR. So you will enjoy those capabilities on your Xbox games. Let's not lie. But if Microsoft is already threw in the towel and they're like, you know what? We're just going to keep it simple. For the best graphics, 4K 30. And if we can maintain some level of quality by giving you 60 frames performance, then we'll give it to you. If not, you're not getting it. That's a bad attitude. Because when does it stop? That's the real question, right? Is Fable going to be 4K 30 with no performance options? Like, when does it stop? Is Avowed, is that going to have performance mode? Like, when, at this point, right, the only games you can guarantee performance mode or 60 frames is going to be the racing game, Forza. Guaranteed. Guaranteed. Everything else is up in the air. You don't know what you don't know at this point. And that's not right. But that's an Xbox problem. I think with PlayStation, and again, I'm not including third party. Third party, again, is not responsible for the best performance of the console. Sure, you could demand better from them, but they could come back, we didn't tell you to buy a console. Like, a third party could be like, we told you to buy a console? We told you to play our games on console? You made that choice, so you deal with it. So third party could be like, hey, hopefully, third party could put the effort and be like, no, we're going to give you a great experience. We're going to give you frames. We understand. And we're going to do right by you, especially when they're charging us $70, right? That's on them. But first party, it's your job to provide the best experience. It's your job to give us these options. It is your duty. It's your damn console. If not you, then who? If you can't do it, then who can? Like, really? And these consoles can do it. If something's wrong with Xbox Series X, then I don't know. That is beyond me. That is beyond my pay grade. Okay? But as you can see with PlayStation, they provided these options. I think they have a better plan, better overall strategy. So I don't think this is an overall console lack of power issue. You're only seeing this on Xbox with their first party. Again, this is a first party conversation. Third party is a whole different animal. Because again, they don't have to provide it because they never convinced you to buy it, right? It's the first party that's trying to convince us to buy their consoles, not the third party, right? Even though I would love to see third party be more stuff. How crazy! You know who I really want to see? Really, I'm waiting to see what Rockstar does. Because Grand Theft Auto 6 is going to be huge, and details. They are very detail oriented. Huge maps. They're going to be very detail oriented with their stuff. They're very meticulous. They do a great job with their huge world. And you could best believe Grand Theft Auto 6 is going to be huge. It's going to be crazy if they find a way to make their game in a performance mode 60 frames. I'm just saying. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe, like the video, stick around. 60 Frames No Like podcast every Tuesday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern. This is your only friend in YouTube streets, PorterRock77, and I hope you enjoyed this video.